The Praetorian Guard, Chapter 21. The stealth ship slipped silently back into the hidden hangar of the Shadows of the Night headquarters. The moment they touched down, the team moved with grim efficiency, unloading their gear and ensuring that Princess Lana and her sister were taken to a secure location within the base. Their mission had been a success, but the implications of what they uncovered weighed heavily on everyone's minds. John's gaze drifted over to Sarah, who was already in discussion with General Hulk, briefing him on the mission's outcome. He could see the hard lines of determination etched on her face as she recounted the events. They had gathered critical evidence against House Glaber and uncovered a conspiracy that ran far deeper than they initially thought. Meanwhile, Marta wasted no time. She headed straight to her workstation, plugging her tablet into the mainframe to begin a thorough analysis of the documents and data they had downloaded from the pirate base. The entire room buzzed with tension, everyone on edge as they awaited the results of her findings. John stood nearby, arms crossed, watching as Marta's fingers danced across the keyboard, her eyes scanning the streams of data flying across the screen. She was in her element, the hum of the machinery and the clack of keys the only sounds in the room. After what felt like an eternity, Marta's hands froze, her eyes narrowing at something on the screen. A deep frown creased her brow as she leaned closer, her fingers moving with more deliberate precision. "What is it?" John asked, sensing the shift in her demeanor. Marta didn't look up, her voice tight with disbelief. "I'm seeing two names, encoded and hidden deep within the documents. They were buried in a string of corrupted data, almost like someone didn't want them to be found." She paused, her jaw tightening as she entered another sequence to decrypt the names. As the results appeared on the screen, Marta's face went pale, her fingers trembling slightly. "Sarah?" Marta called out, her voice louder now, carrying an edge of urgency. "You need to see this." Sarah broke away from her conversation with General Hulk and moved swiftly to Marta's station, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the data on the screen. "What did you find?" Sarah asked, her tone calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. Marta's voice was barely above a whisper, her expression a mix of shock and anger. "I found two names embedded in the encrypted files we took from the pirates' base. The names are coded, but I managed to crack it. They belong to our own." Sarah's face hardened, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information. "Who are they?" she asked. Though her voice was calm, John could hear the restrained fury beneath it. Marta took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. "The names are Lieutenant Eric Fawn and Specialist Kayla Marin. Both of them were agents with the Shadows of the Night." A cold silence fell over the room. The implications of Marta's words were like a blade hanging over their heads. John's gut twisted at the thought that members of their own unit could be involved with the traitorous activities they were fighting against. Sarah's face was a mask of controlled rage. Her hands clenched into tight fists. "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice a low growl that barely masked her anger. Marta nodded, her expression one of grim determination. "I've triple-checked it. The data is clear. Vaughn and Marin's names were deliberately hidden in those files, and there's evidence that they've been in contact with pirate cells and possibly even with House Glaber itself. They're not just informants, they're actively feeding our secrets to the enemy." John couldn't hold back his frustration any longer. "Traitors within our own ranks," he said, the words like poison on his tongue. "They knew our movements, our strategies, everything. That's how the enemy's been one step ahead of us this whole time." Sarah's eyes blazed with cold fury as she stared at the screen, her mind racing through every mission they'd executed in recent months. "They've been compromising us from the inside," she said, her voice sharp and cutting. "This is why our operations have been failing. This is why Vaos knew we were coming for him. They've been giving our enemies the advantage." Marta's face was tight with a mixture of anger and betrayal. "I always suspected there was something off, but I never thought it would be our own people. Vaughn and Marin were trusted. Vaughn even led some of the most crucial missions. And now, to find out, they've been working against us." Sarah took a deep breath, struggling to keep her composure. "We need to move carefully," she said, her voice icy. "If they're still active within the shadows, we can't risk them knowing that we're onto them. We need to set a trap,
gather undeniable proof, and expose them for the traitors they are.
Marta nodded, her fingers already flying over the keyboard.
I'm setting up a surveillance net on their communications right now. If they whisper so much as whisper to their contacts, we'll know about it.
John's eyes were locked on Sarah, sensing the burden of betrayal weighing heavily on her shoulders.
What's our next move?
He asked quietly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. Sarah met his gaze, her expression fierce and resolute.
We tighten the noose,
she said.
We gather every piece of evidence, follow every lead, and when the time is right, we bring Vaughn and Marin down. No mercy.
Marta's fingers paused on the keyboard as she looked up at Sarah, a flicker of doubt in her eyes.
Sarah, what if there are more? What if Vaughn and Marin aren't the only ones involved in this conspiracy?
Sarah's jaw tightened, and for a moment, a shadow of vulnerability crossed her features.
Then we'll find them,
she said, her voice softer but filled with an iron resolve.
One by one, we'll root out every last traitor in our midst. The shadows of the night won't fall to treachery. Not while I still breathe.
John nodded in agreement, his gaze fierce.
We'll make them regret the day they thought they could betray us. This isn't just a fight for the Dominion anymore, it's personal.
Marta turned back to her console, determination etched across her face.
I'll track every move they make. They won't see us coming.
Sarah placed a hand on Marta's shoulder, her touch both reassuring and filled with a quiet strength.
Good. We can't afford any more surprises. We take control of this situation, and we do it our way.
As the team stood together in the dimly lit room, John knew that the battle they faced was no longer just against external enemies. It was against the darkness lurking within their own ranks. And the shadows of the night would not rest until every traitor was exposed and brought to justice. The atmosphere in the shadows of the night headquarters was electric with tension as John and his team prepared for the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken, hunting down traitors within their own ranks. The betrayal of Lieutenant Eric Vaughan and Specialist Kayla Marin had cut deep, and now it was time to expose them. Sarah's voice was cold and focused as she briefed the team in the war room.
Vaughan and Marin think they're still under the radar, but we've got their movements tracked down to the minute. Marta's intercepted their communications. Tonight, they're meeting with a contact at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the capital. This is where we make our move.
Mark cracked his knuckles, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light.
Finally, we get to show these traitors what happens when you cross the shadows. I've been waiting for this.
Sun nodded silently, checking his weapons with methodical precision. His calm demeanor was betrayed only by the tension in his eyes. He knew this mission wasn't just about bringing in suspects. It was about reclaiming their honor. John's jaw clenched as he tightened the straps on his tactical vest. Betrayal was a wound that cut deeper than any blade. For Vaughan and Marin to sell out their own unit, their own brothers and sisters in arms, was unforgivable. He was ready to bring them down, no matter the cost.
Remember,
Sarah said, her voice steady as steel.
We take them alive if possible. We need them to confess and expose everyone involved in this conspiracy. But if they resist...
She let the sentence hang in the air, her meaning clear. The team nodded, and with that, they moved out. The shuttle sped silently over the darkened landscape of the capital's outskirts, its cloaking systems fully engaged. As they approached the warehouse, the building loomed in the darkness like a fortress of shadows, its windows broken and its walls covered in grime. The perfect hideout for traitors. Marta's voice crackled in John's earpiece.
I'm monitoring all their comms. Vaughan and Marin are inside the warehouse. No sign of their contact yet. We need to move quickly before they get spooked.
John, leading the team, gave a quick hand signal, and they spread out, each taking their positions around the perimeter. He crept up to the entrance, his plasma sword ready in his grip, the blade humming softly in anticipation. Sarah moved to his side, her eyes scanning the area.
On my signal, we breach,
she whispered.
Mark, take the rear exit. Sun, secure the roof. John, you're with me.
John nodded, his eyes never leaving the entrance. The tension was so thick, it felt like the air itself was about to snap.
Now,
Sarah commanded, and the team sprang into action. John kicked the door in with a force that sent it crashing against the wall, the impact echoing through the empty warehouse. He and Sarah swept into the room, weapons raised, scanning the shadows. In the center of the room stood Vaughn and Marin, their faces twisted in shock as they realized their cover was blown.
"Don't move,"
Sarah barked, leveling her plasma pistol at them.
"Hands where we can see them."
But instead of surrendering, Vaughn's eyes narrowed in cold determination. He reached for a concealed device on his wrist and slammed his fist down on it. A series of hidden turrets sprang to life from the ceiling, their barrels swiveling toward the team with lethal intent.
"Ambush!"
John shouted, diving to the side as the turrets opened fire. Blue plasma bolts filled the air, sizzling past him as he rolled behind a stack of crates.
They were ready for us.
Mark and Sun were already on the move. Mark took aim with his plasma pistols, targeting the turrets with pinpoint accuracy, blasting them out of commission one by one. Sun, from his position on the roof, threw a flashbang through a skylight, the explosion disorienting Vaughn and Marin for a precious few seconds. John didn't waste a moment. He activated his implants, his reflexes kicking into overdrive as he dashed forward at blinding speed. His plasma sword flared to life, and with a single slash, he took out the last turret. Then he closed the distance to Vaughn in a heartbeat, delivering a brutal strike that sent the traitor sprawling to the floor. Vaughn, his face twisted with rage, tried to reach for a concealed weapon, but John stomped down on his hand, crushing the device beneath his boot.
"It's over, Vaughn,"
John growled, his eyes blazing with fury.
"You betrayed us, and now you're going to answer for it."
Meanwhile, Sarah was locked in a fierce struggle with Marin. The specialist was more skilled than they had anticipated, moving with a deadly grace as she fought back. Marin drew a concealed blade and lunged at Sarah, but Sarah twisted away, catching Marin's wrist and twisting it sharply. The blade clattered to the ground.
"Not today, Marin,"
Sarah hissed, driving her elbow into Marin's gut, doubling her over. In a swift move, Sarah brought her knee up, knocking Marin to the ground. With Vaughn pinned beneath John and Marin struggling on the floor, Sarah leaned in close, her voice a low, dangerous whisper.
"Tell us everything. Who are you working with? How deep does this conspiracy go?"
Vaughn spat blood onto the floor, his eyes filled with defiance.
"You think you've won? You don't understand how big this is. The Glabus, the rebels, they're everywhere. You can't stop what's coming."
John's grip tightened on Vaughn's collar, lifting him slightly off the ground.
"You're going to tell us everything, or I swear you'll wish you had."
Marin, her face bruised and furious, locked eyes with Sarah.
"You're fools if you think you can stop them. The Empire's days are numbered, and when it falls, we'll be the ones standing victorious."
Sarah's expression turned icy.
"Not if we have anything to say about it."
Marta's voice crackled over the comm, urgency in her tone.
"We've got incoming. I'm picking up multiple hostiles converging on your location. Looks like their backup is here. Move, move,"
Sarah ordered.
"We're extracting now. Sun, secure the roof. Mark, lay down suppressive fire."
Sun leaped down from his position on the roof, taking out 2 enemy soldiers with perfectly timed shots. Mark, meanwhile, unleashed a hail of plasma fire, keeping the approaching reinforcements pinned down long enough for the team to drag Vaughn and Marin toward the shuttle. John grabbed Vaughn by the collar, dragging him up the ramp of the shuttle while Mark covered their retreat. Marin was thrown inside, kicking and screaming, her defiance palpable even in defeat. The moment the team was aboard, the shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting off and rocketing into the sky. Plasma bolts sizzled past the hull as enemy fire rained down, but they were already too high for their pursuers to catch. John sat in the back of the shuttle, his gaze locked on the 2 traitors they had just captured. The adrenaline still pulsed through his veins, but now it was mixed with the cold satisfaction of justice. Sarah turned to face Vaughn and Marin, her eyes burning with a controlled fury.
"You will tell us everything,"
she said, her voice like ice.
"You'll name every contact, every ally, and every house involved in this conspiracy. And when we're done, you'll wish you had never turned against the shadows of the night."
John leaned closer, his voice low and deadly.
You picked the wrong side, and now you're going to pay for it.
The traitors glared back at him, but John could see the fear in their eyes, the dawning realization that their plan had failed, that they were now at the mercy of the Empire's most feared operatives.